All right, welcome everybody back to Unquestionable with Calvin Smith. I have a super special guest today. I have Miss Jahannah James. Welcome, Johanna.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. If anything, I should be thanking you for coming on. And we've been in talks for some time this year, but there's been some scheduling stuff. I know you had a lot going on this year, so I couldn't get you on
It's been busy.
last season. But I figured, you would be the perfect guest to kick off season two. I mean, I'm kind of calling this season two, I guess. So yeah, I guess for those who don't really know who you are or what you do you want to take a couple minutes and just kind of tell the audience, who you are?
Yeah, sure. I'm Johanna. I live in London. I do a bunch of stuff. I'm a trained actor, so I act. But last year I got completely obsessed with ancient history, and I went to Egypt to research a movie script that I was writing, and then that kind of snowballed. I ended up making like 9 vlogs, I think it was, from my trip to Egypt. And so now I'm like completely immersed in the ancient history mystery side of the web. And yeah, like that's kind of now my job, YouTubing
Yeah,
about ancient history. I love it.
that's really cool. So you've only been in it for like a year or so. I could have sworn
Yeah.
you've been in it for longer, because like I've been looking into this kind of stuff about the same time Jimmy from Bright Insight kind of popped up on YouTube with his like Atlantis stuff. That's
Yes.
about the same time that I just started getting into like watching Brian Forrester and stuff. Um, and then I've been enthralled. So that's crazy. I thought you were in it for a longer time.
Well, I was interested. Actually, Jimmy's video was his Atlantis video. I came across that a little bit late, but that was the first video that kind of got me hooked. But I started like making. It was really in the first lockdown
mm,
that I had the time to actually sit and stop and research. And then I found like Ben from Uncharted X channel and
yes.
watched all his videos. And yeah, but it actually is, because I realized it's a year exactly since I got back from Egypt. So it's been a year since I've been kind of actively making stuff.
Right.
But yeah, a lot's happened in a year.
Yeah, a lot can happen. I mean, same for me, like I had this big move and everything, and it's like it's crazy. I wouldn't have expected I'd be at this point a year ago.
Mm.
So as far as like the ancient technology stuff, like what was the one thing that like you saw and you were like, I have to talk about this? Like, was there like a smoking gun for you?
Mm. Well, it was I think it was a number of things that clicked into place. And when
Hmm.
it so the first thing that I was interested in was the idea of Atlantis and the theory that Atlantis could hypothetically actually be scientifically true, because that's when I became aware of the Younger Dryas comet impact. And then it was alongside Ben's videos, because Ben from Uncharted X does like the most amazing up close 4K videos of
I
Egypt. So
agree.
you really feel like you've been to Egypt
Yeah,
through Ben's videos. And he was just documenting all of the like ancient saw marks and machinery marks, and just kind of really showing you why and breaking down why these machining marks are so amazing, and why they're so mysterious. And when I realized that the timeline from the Younger Dryas comet impact, when I realized that that aligned precisely with the date that Plato and Solon put for the destruction of Atlantis, when that aligned, my brain went, "Oh my god! I think that there was actually an ancient civilization that we like. I think it works."
right.
So once that kind of got that spine tingling moment, that was one of what convinced me. And then from then on, um, I can't. Yeah, like it just makes sense in my brain. I was like, that makes total sense.
Yeah,
all of
see,
the all of the holes that appear in the modern day timeline of human history, all of the problems, like why are there these like high powered saw marks in granite, or why is the oldest stuff in Egypt the most precise? For me, in my brain, it makes total sense that they're actually just like leftovers or remnants of a previous civilization that was there, that got destroyed in the Younger Dryas comet impact. Because if anybody doesn't know what that is, it basically around 9,500 BC, most of the world got destroyed by something. Like it was an ice age, and suddenly all the ice age stopped. Either by a comet impact or some sort of solar flare that
Right.
made basically a massive deluge on planet Earth, and most things probably got destroyed.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's like pretty much on the line of like defined science now.
Exactly. Yeah. Like it's kind of the same thing for me. Like, I kind of was like looking into this stuff kind of casually, not really like in on it. I was more of like an ancient aliens guy. And that's the big thing with ancient technology that's most frustrating, I think, when we're trying to make these arguments, is that people are thinking that we're talking like alien technology, or like, they had like flying cars and like, mermaid people or whatever. And like, that's
Yeah,
not.
I don't think I've watched Ancient Aliens, as much as like a really fun, amazing, like kind of gimmicky show that is.
Right.
It's actually, I think it's doing a disservice to
Yes.
the people who are actually trying to hypothesize about ancient history being in a sort of cyclistic system. So I think, yeah, when people go, oh, was alien who built the pyramids? Aliens. I was like, actually, I think it's probably ancient civilizations or other human hybrids that we haven't discovered. We're discovering all different new kinds of human
Dragon
cousins.
Man.
Exactly. So I think that rather than going straight to aliens, I think it's much more interesting and plausible that there's just so much of human history that we are not aware of and was discovering. It's
Exactly.
very exciting. When people are like, why are you so interested in ancient history? I was like, because it's like our history, and
it's who we are. Yeah.
And also, if what we're talking about is that human civilization isn't a linear line, and human civilization works in cycles, and things get destroyed, if these comets are coming back on a regular basis, then we should probably be looking up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like it doesn't hurt to look at, what happened in the past and prepare, just in case, to look and say, okay, this comet from the Younger Dryas did happen. Now let's prepare for it next time. That's what we need to do. Instead, these people are kind of hand waving, calling us, pseudoscientists and, fringe theorists and conspiracy theorists. And it's like, come on, man, that's the evidence is there. You're just choosing not to look at it.
I think that there's a lot of old gatekeepers that are still there right now, from maybe Egypt or from just other places in the academic world. There's a lot of gatekeepers who aren't, but they can't be around forever. And I think that more open-minded critical thinkers are coming onto the scene, and I think more and more people are kind of going, hey, actually that does make, we probably should look at the science of this, because like behind all of the sort of pseudoscience, ancient aliens name tag that we get, underneath it, it's all actual science. We're looking at geology. You're looking at carbon dating. You're looking at linking, making common sense links out of imagery from different cultures. Like it's all kind of, it's not, I don't think it's very conspiracy at all. Like everything that I've heard about the theory of ancient Atlantis, it's completely plausible with modern day geology. It's plausible. Not that there's like rock hard evidence of it, but it's not impossible. They've proven it's not impossible.
Yeah. With that being, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, when you say the word Atlantis, like what you were saying about ancient aliens, that's Atlantis has also been tainted by modern day kind of fiction. I actually looked up all of the movies that referenced or was set in Atlantis, and every single one of them was complete science fiction, and they actually weren't based on what Plato's writings were at all. And they have like, magic glowing crystals and flying cars and all that kind of like they're going towards like unicorns and stuff. And that's not at all what Plato was just talking about. A city that was, had agriculture and a structure and gods, and they're very basic civilization. Actually, Atlantis, it's not too far-fetched at all to think that there was a place.
Yeah, I fully agree. And with that being said, where do you think Atlantis could have been?
So Atlantis is the Greek name for the capital city But the kingdoms that Atlantis was in, there was 10 of them, and I think they were over such a huge area of the world. So when you're talking about Atlantis, I'm talking about the civilization. I think it was in, I think it was largely in the slice of the world that goes from sort of southern Spain, northern Africa, down the West African coast, probably into the Mediterranean, and then out off the Strait of Gibraltar into the Atlantic Ocean. I think like that whole slice of pie of the world was probably where like the 10 kingdoms, and who knows, they could have been even further out to the Americas
Yeah.
or further up around. Definitely. So, but I think, but the capital city was the name that people, like, some people don't even know that it was 10 kingdoms, that there were 10
Right.
kings.
Yeah. I didn't know that till I started looking into it and like looking at Jimmy's videos and stuff. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
really? Like I didn't know a lot of the things about Atlantis that the story tells. It was crazy.
So yeah, I don't know where the Atlantis. I mean, first I looked at the Richat structure, and I was like,
yeah,
there's a lots of stuff that points to that. Like,
there
I've got
is.
to admit it to Jimmy, I think there is a lot. But then when I started looking into Randall Carlson's Atlantis studies in the Atlantic Ocean with the
Yes.
Azores,
Yep.
I think I'm swaying more towards the Azores. But who's to say that they didn't have multiple capital
Yeah.
cities in these multiple kingdoms, and the Richat structure may have been one,
Yeah.
and they also maybe one in the Azores. So
I agree. Yeah. I
it could be
actually,
both or neither. Very
yeah,
helpful.
I actually had Dr. Greg Little on, and he has even attested that he was on Ancient Aliens, and they actually like cut his words to say some really weird, crazy things. So he's vowed never to go on Ancient Aliens again because of what
Yes.
they did to him. So he said on my show, don't watch the show, don't watch my episode.
Yeah.
But he's been studying Atlantis in the Bahamas, actually off the coast of Andros Island. There's a place called Bimini Road, and we talked about this place that he's been researching for years.
Nice.
There's actually a whole, it's like a 1 or 2 mile long cement road that is under the water, and it's clear as day. Greg Little says that there's engravings and writings, there's sculptures that are found there, and yet academia is saying it's just a natural formation, we're not going to look at it anymore. And yet he's been spending 40 years deep diving here, finding new things every time he goes. And so yeah, it's not a fringe theory to think that there could have been some sort of civilization that just as lost, was washed away. And it's funny that you mentioned like the Richat structure, because that's right where, if the Younger Dryas, well, when the Younger Dryas happened, that's right where the water was washing over, is right in that general area, according to Randall Carlson.
So the impact zones for the comet, the 9,500 comet, there was like, I think there's there's like up to 4 or 5 impact zones that Randall has kind of mapped out in the North American ice sheet. So the whole of North America was completely covered in ice, like 2 miles thick, and they found it, I think it's all around kind of like going from Canada downwards, and they've got these like kind of impact sites, and you can literally see where the ice that was all over North America instantly melted, turned into a literal wall of a tsunami of like melted ice water. And it would have gone like, when I got to be in a group that got to be on a Zoom call with Randall Carlson, and I asked the question. Cool. Was very cool. I got to ask, okay, from the Younger Dryas comet impacts, like, what would the fallout zone of that be? And I mean, it's very hard to say, but North Africa definitely has the same kind of water damage across its surface, especially if you can even look at Google Maps now, it's very easy. You can literally see with your own eyes, look at North America, like the Scablands, and look at North Africa and West Africa, and it's the same. So it's not completely far-fetched to say that the impact zone was like probably 2/3 of the world.
Exactly.
Would have been destroying everything. And as Graham Hancock says, everybody lives near the water, or you live on the coast, because that's where the rivers meet the sea, and that's where you would have ports to travel around and exchange goods, and so anyone that lived not up in the mountain area, you're gone. Your
Yeah.
house is gone, your family's
Yeah.
gone, everything's gone.
Right. And then
Everything's
the
gone.
argument is that those those people passed down, the people that did survive that impact passed down that knowledge to, what we know of today. And, people, it's my biggest smoking gun for me is when I started looking at the Sphinx in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
That's what just absolutely blew my mind, is when I looked at the water erosion that's all over the Sphinx. It's like the
Yeah.
number one thing for
Yeah.
me. I can't shut up about it. Um, and it's just crazy that the evidence is like right there in front of your face, and you have people like Dr. Robert Schoch attesting to it. He was a total skeptic before he even went to Egypt and
Mm-hmm.
saw the Sphinx, and then he said within minutes of looking at it, he knew for a fact it was at least 9,000 years old. And it's like, how? And he shows this evidence, and he gets laughed out of this conference that he presents his evidence at. And it's sad, because it's
Yeah. But I think that's going to just make the story of how this is all going to come to light. I think that's going to make the story even better. That the fact that these guys were laughed at, but they were the first original whistleblowers to the whole
yeah,
thing. And I think that
100%.
people who, more and more people now, thousands of people are joining the kind of the idea of the change of the timeline of human history. More and more people are getting into it and agreeing with it. But they were
Yeah.
like the OGs who had to face the most stick, and they had the most to put on the line. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of really grateful to those guys.
Yeah.
And I've seen, I mean, I'm not a geologist, but just going up, and I've seen the Sphinx enclosure with my own eyes. And yeah, the erosion there is heavy. It's like stick your arm through the gaps in the rock, like it's been
Yeah.
eroded.
Crazy.
And it's unlike anything else that's on the Giza Plateau. So it's like this stuff, if it was just wind erosion, like they're trying to make it out it is, then surely everything else that was in the same timeline as the Sphinx would be wind eroded. But like it's not. It's just not. All the temples that are built all around it, supposedly at the same time, just don't
Yeah.
have that erosion on. So,
Exactly.
And also the fact that when they, I think Robert Schoch and then Jonathan West, they did a presentation. There was like 200 geologists in the audience, and they showed a picture of the Sphinx, the body. They put tape over the head,
Yeah,
so they
right,
couldn't tell
right.
what it was. They just saw the rock, and then they were like, in your professional opinion, is this water erosion or is this like wind erosion? And it was something like, the largest percentage of them were like, yeah, that's, in my professional opinion, that's water erosion. And when they pulled the tape off and revealed what it was, like so many just retracted what they said, which is such a shame, because I was like, wait, your professional opinion, when it was just, when you didn't know the context, the political context of what it was. Man, but more and more
Exactly.
people are joining him, which is really cool. Like more and more geologists are getting brave enough to put their name on the line. And I think that when it's just, there's safety in numbers, isn't it? So when you get enough people to say, actually, geology and science says that the Sphinx enclosure and the Sphinx original body, it's definitely 10,000 years old at least, then
Yep.
it's going to
Yeah.
move the mountain, really.
100%.
Exciting.
Yeah, I
Hopefully
totally
we're
agree.
alive when that happens.
Right.
Be like, I told you so. I knew it.
Right. Slap in their face. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of why I made the show, because everyone was thinking I was the crazy guy talking about this stuff on social media. And so I was like, you know what? I can't elaborate what I'm trying to say enough on through typing stuff. So I'm just going to talk about it and into a microphone, and you guys are going to listen to it. And that's why we're here. So I'm trying to spread the word as much as I can, and get people to open their eyes a little bit and be a little bit more open to the evidence. But
Yeah, and also we're probably gonna be getting loads of theories wrong, but that's okay. Like,
yeah,
I think that people can have crazy theories that are wrong, but I think that if you're not allowed to question anything to do with like the timeline of human history, I mean, you're gonna miss such
yeah,
thing. I think future generations are really gonna think like, oh, what idiots were those people in
totally agree.
1998 doing? Like, what were they doing? It's very clearly they got the wrong dates from
Right.
the year. And yeah, I think that
Yeah.
we're not going to get it right, but that's okay. I mean, someone could probably
Yeah.
like throw out 20 completely wrong theories, but in their wild thinking, they might just tap into the one like chunk of the puzzle that's missing.
Right.
And we're like, oh my god, yeah,
Yeah, definitely. And with all that being said too, I saw fairly recently you got special access to Stonehenge.
I did.
What was that like? I mean, that's great. I did watch your stuff on it. And I was enthralled with it. It's interesting.
Yeah, I'd actually never been to Stonehenge. I've grown up driving
Really?
past it
Huh.
loads and loads. But it's actually quite like far away in the country, and so we'd driven past it when we were driving up and down England, but I'd never gone in and gone up close. So I present as like part of my like one of my side jobs. I present for English Heritage, their TikTok account. So
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
they
I've
want to
seen
get more
those.
history onto the social media. So I present for them, and they said, "Oh, do you want to cover sort of the solstice up at Stonehenge?" I was like, "Absolutely."
Yeah.
And I kind of said, "Hey, can I just like quickly film something for myself?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure, I've got 20 minutes." So I had about 20 minutes to run around Stonehenge completely. I had to get up at 5 a.m. because we had to get there before all the crowds did. So we got there 7 a.m. in the morning. We filmed the stuff for the English Heritage TikTok, and then I got 20 minutes. But there was a security guard watching at all times,
Yeah.
though. It's heavily guarded, that place. But oh my goodness, like from seeing it from afar or seeing pictures of it, it did not look as epic and as amazing as it did up close. Um, and it felt like I was expecting maybe it was going to feel a bit like dark rituals. Like I was like, oh, maybe people were
Hmm.
like sacrificed here, but it didn't. It just felt like super beautiful and light, and I was just in awe of these old stones. And it felt like it was way, way, way older than Egypt stuff, because the weather in England is so wet and soggy that
Yeah.
the stones have eroded so much, whereas the stuff in Egypt has stayed pretty intact for thousands of years because it's so
Yeah.
dry.
Right. Right.
So it felt like a real old. I can see why people used to talk about like the wizards and Merlin and have that whole kind of King Arthur mythology to it, because
Right.
it does seem just like so old. I mean, it's even
Ah,
older than
that's so
King
interesting.
Arthur technically, but it's a very magical place. But I mean, England doesn't have that much old sort of
Yeah.
megalithic stuff like Egypt does, but it
Yeah.
was really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, well, also in English, I saw that you also do you do these like castle tours too. You've been like doing these like little tours of castles and giving like little blips of like the history of these cool
So
castles all around. That's
yeah, that
super cool. It's really
those
interesting stuff.
castles, that's English heritage again. So they invite me to go down to film those little videos, they're the videos for the English heritage.
Love it.
So English heritage has Dover Castle, which is what Henry VIII built that, or he lived there. Not sure if he built it. No, he lived there. It was built way earlier
One
than
of
that. That's
those.
wrong. It was way earlier than Henry VIII. Sorry, Henry VIII built Deal Castle and some of the ones around it, but he definitely lived at Dover Castle, and it's pretty epic. Like I forget, because I grew up in England, and we have castles. There's a lot of castles in England, and I
Mhm.
forget that other countries, like in America, you don't have castles. That's not
Yeah.
something that's part of your history.
It's
Um,
crazy. Like I look at your videos and I'm like, I am so jealous. I was like, I can't just like go down the street and like see a castle. Like I might find a lighthouse if I drive a couple hundred miles north, but that's about all I got. And I mean, I guess I'm pretty close to Serpent Mound, which is cool. I still haven't gone and seen Serpent Mound.
okay, amazing.
So at some
Yeah,
point, make a trip there.
yeah. You
Um,
you have equally cool stuff as well. Like yeah, Serpent Mounds. You have like Scablands, and
yeah,
this
yeah, true.
and more history from America is being dug up. I mean, they used to think that humans didn't even live there past like
Yeah.
13,000 years ago. It turns out just found footprints from 25,000 years ago, and that's only going to get
Yeah,
older. So
true. And that's also going back to one of my previous guests, Dr. Greg Little. He's done a lot of studying on the mounds that are all through America. Like he went to Serpent Mound. There's apparently other like weird native mounds that are like little huts kind of built underground, and
mhm.
they're basically all over America. There's thousands of them, and Dr. Greg Little has a ton of evidence in his book called Mounds, where he just presents as evidence that these mounds are thousands of years older than we originally thought. And once again,
Mhm.
he gets laughed at and called a fringe theorist. Um, very
I
weird
think
stuff.
if I was going to take a stab at something, I think that a lot of anything super ancient, that wasn't like officially record, like if we don't know exactly when, like, so for example, they don't know exactly when the pyramids were made.
Right.
My stab would be that they were older than what we predicted. Anything that like a particular castle where it's in written history that it was built on a certain date, cool. But a lot of the old ancient statues, monuments, mounds, tunnel systems, underground cities, I would take a stab that they're a lot older than anybody.
Very interesting. Yeah, definitely. Another thing too is I had no idea about this until I saw one of your videos. It's the carvings on the back of the moai on Easter Island. I had no idea about that until I watched your video. Like, why have we never been told about this?
The moai statues, yeah, I'd only ever seen them from the front. And
me too.
They are way more interesting on the back. Like, obviously they're super interesting, but they all look pretty much the same from the front, but the back of them are intricately carved with so much symbology. And I think they are like differently carved as well. Like different dudes have different back tattoos. And what's amazing is that because they're like made, a lot of them are just heads sticking out of the ground. A lot of the backs are really preserved because they've just been underground for however long they've been underground. And those heads are another thing where I think they might possibly be older. We think we do. But we think we do when they think they are. Sorry, jet lag head. That's I have an itching feeling that the Moai statues could be older than.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, because it's like you look at the engravings on the back of the Moai statues, and then you look at great engravings at places like Göbekli Tepe, and they are nearly identical in style.
They have such similarities to the point where you're like, it's like if you were in art class and somebody if you bought the Göbekli Tepe art and the Easter Island art on the stone, if you bought them, if you were doing that in an art class, I think the teacher would bring those students in and be like, look, someone's copied someone, because this is not original work. Like you're working together. Like it's just too close. The symbology is just, and the style of some of this stuff is just way too close. Considering that the academic or the mainstream historical viewpoint is that nobody in the ancient world was traveling globally, that everybody was just where they were. There was no ancient global travel according to current written history, but that doesn't make sense.
Right.
Especially as well, because there was some links with Egypt and Australia, random. But there are boomerangs that are found in Australia and also in Egypt.
Interesting.
And the name for the boomerangs, you can see them in the Cairo Museum, and the name for the boomerang in Egyptian translates as foreigner's weapon. So they're even referencing this thing as not coming from Egypt, and then they are found obviously in the Aboriginal Australia. So that makes me think like, okay, somebody in Egypt had been to Australia and had traded and had got a foreigner's weapon.
100%. Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I totally agree. I actually just started looking into their in the Grand Canyon, and in the United States, there's actually been Egyptian artifacts found inside the Grand Canyon, and they actually date back to the Old Kingdom. And there's straight up busts of King Akhenaten and Queen Nefertiti that are complete gold that were found inside the Grand Canyon. So it's like, how did those sculptures get from Egypt to America? Obviously someone is sailing.
But the thing with that is potentially someone could have brought them over, because do you know that like the Egyptian artifacts, ancient artifacts, are like one of the biggest black markets in the world. So there is a possibility that somebody in the Victorian times could have purchased illegally a bunch of mummies and a bunch of busts, and then eventually placed them in like that's possible. Whereas the boomerang thing, the boomerang was found in like Egyptian graves from dated like time sealed from that time. Whereas I mean, that is where we get into conspiracy territory, because there's a lot of stuff in America that's found that's like this. The Smithsonian apparently has like a secret chain, like a secret vault that kind of is the same as the Vatican. It's got all the world's secret stuff in.
Huh.
But anything in the world
Weird.
that's been weirded that the Smithsonian have but there is some stuff that, like, I think that, as even if it's a conspiracy theory, the essence of the story or something about it, there must be always one part of it that rings true. Like, no smoke without fire. I do think that there's always some, like, there might be an element or a variation of the conspiracy theory that could ring true.
Yeah.
But but then, or if travel was entirely possible, if we realized there was global travel, then yes, it is possible that some Egyptian stuff made it over to America.
That is very true.
That time period, like if they made it over to Australia, they could definitely make it over to America.
Right. Yeah, that is true. Another thing too, it says my last episode that I did before this one here that'll be coming out is one that I did on the schist disc. And I saw you actually did a video on the schist disc.
Yes.
So speaking of things encased in time, I mean, what the heck do you think the schist disc is?
Well, when I went to Egypt and saw it, it's literally just in a cabinet at the back of the Cairo Museum. It looks really weird. It looks like someone's taken a piece of some sort of Victorian machinery and just put it in a museum. But actually, when you look at it, it's made of stone. It's carved stone. It's not pottery. It's carved stone, and it's like it looks like something from some sort of sci-fi. It looks like part of a machine. And so our tour guide, who, when I went around Egypt, I went to Egypt with Jimmy from Bright Insight and Ben from Uncharted X, and we had a tour guide called Youssef, who he is the son of one of the oldest wisdom keepers that Egypt has. And his dad, like, they have a tradition. The indigenous people of Egypt have their own traditions, and they have an entirely different historical timeline of Egypt than the mainstream. Entirely different. So they have their own sort of ages of what happened. The timeline that we have of ancient Egypt is what the French and the British decided it was around 1800, when they first went to Egypt and started Egyptology. They decided to guess what the history of Egypt was, and so they decided on the timelines for all the kings and everything, whereas the indigenous people, the Cometian people, because it was originally called Kemet before it was called Egypt, and they have their own timeline. They have an oral tradition of the Sphinx, like the rock of the Sphinx, being respected, and people going to it from 50,000 years ago. And then they have it was carved out later into a lion, and then only later in the Egyptian time did they whittle the head down to a pharaoh. So the head was carved much later. So that's the oral tradition that the indigenous people of Egypt have.
Very interesting.
They have their own timelines for the kings and things, and they believe that a lot of Egypt was started a lot earlier than what the British and the French say. They say that the first kingdom was around 3000 BC. They think it was more. It could be pushed back to as much as 7000 BC. They think that the first kingdoms were just like, if you take the kingdoms of Egypt and stretch it out a lot wider, that's more aligning to what their oral traditions say. So Youssef, who was with us, I was picking his brains about everything about his dad. I was like, what did your dad say about the schist disc? And he said, well, the only thing my dad really ever told me about it was that they made a replica of it in the, I want to say, the 70s, and they did some tests, and they did loads of like experiments on this, and they blew what did they, I think it was water, or was it air? No, I think, pretty sure it was water. No, they spun it, and it was something to do with, it was either water or air, but anyway, they said that it creates, no, it wasn't water. They spun it with air, but that's it. They threw water at it while it was spinning. And the shape, it's got a very unusual design, hasn't it? It kind of looks like a steering wheel, but it's got like some curved. It looks almost like a curved lily inside. But when you rotate this spinning wheel, they threw water at it, and it created like an infinity symbol, which could hold like zero gravity. So so he said, according to his dad, that they think it was part of like a zero gravity device, an anti-gravity device.
I mean,
which
I think that's an interesting theory. I feel like
sorry, there we go. They put sound through it. There we
sound. Okay, that is
sound. So it was vibrational sound, and they spun it. And then when they were throwing. They said that they were throwing objects. They were throwing water, and the water was being held in what was kind of like an infinity symbol.
Yeah.
So it created some sort of energy force that was. I mean, it sounds really sci-fi, and it sounds like, oh, I'm not sure about that. But when you actually look at the science of sound and vibrational things, we're doing some really cool things with it. You can now, we're starting to like cure cancer cells with vibrations and sonic, like
some crazy stuff.
So
science is crazy.
So I think science is starting to look into like vibrational sequencing and see, and if you can cure cells with it, I'm sure that I think that sound affects quantum physics in ways that we don't even understand. So it's kind of far-fetched, I don't know, but that's what I was told. So when people say, what's the schist disk, I'm like, well, apparently it's part of a machine that makes anti-gravity.
Yeah, exactly. No big deal. Like I like that theory. I feel like at this point we'd be able to make another arguably better replica of the schist disk and just do this test again.
When I go back to Egypt, I'm 100%. I'm gonna LiDAR if I can. I want to like scan it, like LiDAR 3D.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
I don't know if I'll be able to through the glass. But if anybody gets to Egypt and they can see the schist disk, if it's ever open, just because you can LiDAR scan now on an iPhone. There's an app you can get, super cool. And you can scan it, and then if somebody could 3D print that, I'm not sure how expensive that would be. Right. You could definitely test that, but then again, I mean, it might take you've got to find the right sound frequency. Yeah. It's very important, but
tons of trial and error.
Yeah, like that would be amazing if someone could actually prove that the schist disk had a function. I mean, I think according to the mainstream, it's like it's something to do with like
it's a fruit plate or
like shifting rice or someone was like, oh, that's for it's like a corn or a grain thing, and I was like, it's definitely not. It's got a hole in the middle, which it looks like it literally like a bicycle wheel where there's like a hole in the middle where it definitely attaches onto something,
like a wheel for a ship or like a steering wheel,
Yeah, it looks like a steering wheel or a bicycle wheel. And the way that it's shaped, it's such an unusual shape.
Yeah, and it's not symmetrical either. It's actually slightly asymmetrical. So it's very
that's what a lot of people don't really like. It's as if it's a moving part of something.
Yeah,
100%. It's a moving part of something.
The best argument I heard for a not so fringe theory for the schist disk is that it was used to twine rope and silk. But at the same time, I would love for someone to demonstrate that. I feel like that's also something that'd be pretty easy to demonstrate.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Show me that braid.
Right. Show me how it works.
And why would you need? I also think that stone is a very important part of all the frequency. Like if it's part of the riddle, stone was picked very deliberately in Egypt. The quality of the granite or the diorite, it was brought from hundreds of miles away, dragged in like massive blocks. And I think that they have a function. They have a specific quartz or a hardness to them. I think that the reason why it was made out of that and not out of wood was very important. Whereas if it was for twisting rope or something, then you just need the shape of it. You don't need it to be made of a specific material. It could be carved out of wood, which would be 10 million times easier than carving it out of stone.
Right. Yeah, so exactly.
That's the only thing that I'm thinking about. If it was for braiding, I mean,
show me, show me. It's something.
It could be made out of a much easier thing to carve than the stone that's carved, because that's incredibly hard stone to carve.
Yeah.
But then, so therefore, they must have done it for a reason. It was a functional reason that they picked that exact stone.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. I mean, the schist disc is if I ever get the chance to get to the Cairo Museum, it's the first thing I'm darting for as soon as I get in there. Is I'm going to go look at the schist disc, and I'm going to do the LiDAR thing, because I didn't know there was like an app for that you could do. So
yes, so if
I'm
you've
like,
got the iPhone 12 Pro or higher, then the one with the three cameras on,
right?
You can just download a free app, and because I LiDAR scanned some of the stones from Stonehenge. But I only had limited time to like film it, so I only got like 2 done. But it gives you a really great 3D image rendering. So I'm
very
hope
cool
that you'd be able to you could possibly print something in 3D. I'm guessing if you've got a rendering of it. So yeah, that would be a great thing.
That would be.
I don't know if you can LiDAR scan through glass. Someone's going to be like, no, you can't. So I'm going to have to see who I can become friends with so that I can make that case.
Make some connections.
Yeah.
So something else on your channel that I saw you kind of started recently doing is you kind of started delving into religion a little bit. I saw you had Dr. Bar Ehrman on your show, which I've read a couple of his books. I'm a big fan of him. Pretty jealous that you had him on, and I even saw that you were on the Gnostic Informant podcast too. So why the interest in religion?
I've always been interested. I grew up in a Christian family, so I know a lot of the Bible stuff just from my past, but also how ancient texts, like ancient religious texts, it fits in with ancient civilization. Like they go together like wine and cheese. Like because the ancient civilizations were heavily religious, and religious stories, I think once I realized that religious stories get repeated and they get retold like amongst different, you've got the oral traditions of history and the oral traditions of religion. It's all very similar. So I'm fascinated in that as well. I think it all ties in. So you've got themes in the Bible, like the biggest one is like Noah's Ark,
right,
being almost a direct copy of the Epic of Gilgamesh. You've got the story of Moses, which was found, it was a Sumerian story before it was a Christian story or Jewish story. So yeah, when I realized that, okay, there's themes here, like and I'm interested in, and again, that no smoke without fire, that story, people don't rarely invent just a complete story from nothing. Exactly, right from experience. And so I often think like, who were the real people that the Egyptian gods were based off? Because somebody would have found something, would have inspired the imagery, the name. I think that there probably was a person called Thoth who was a writer, and he then got encapsulated into this god who wrote all the histories of Egypt down. There was probably a dude who wrote that.
I totally agree.
Shakespeare of his time.
And it's like, even look at like the Greek mythologies and other, they all have some sort of either like flood story, or there's like a cosmic serpent that was shooting fire down, and there was battles between gods and these fire serpents coming towards the earth, and it's like all these civilizations have the same story.
I'm interested in the patterns. I like to look for patterns. So where I look all around the world at the symbology of all the ancient civilizations, and you can link them between like Easter Island and Egypt and Turkey. It's the same with the Bible, I guess. I like to look at the patterns and the stories. And it also so much, particularly in the Western world, Christianity is massively impacted. Like our entire date system is based off the Bible and Jesus, and we have we literally do our whole time from when Jesus was born, before and after, and I've loved like how society has been formed is actually like mapped out, how religion was formed, like it's all kind of connected. So I'm really excited to see like how were religions made? How did they grow? How did they change? I'm super interested in it.
I'm kind of the same way. I like to know why people think, what in this book, convinced you that the God is real just from reading this book. I honestly am curious you
Yeah.
know, what is your thought process opposed to mine? Because, you know, obviously I'm atheist. And, you know, I just don't see it in that light. You know, I read it and to me, it's just a story for me.
I'm I'm not atheist because I I see too much. I see too much of there's something. I don't think it's all random. Like the idea of us all just completely randomly being. I just definitely think there's a soul. Like as much as we can study people scientifically, two identical DNA people who are twins are entirely different. They've got souls, and one person will just never ever, a fingerprint will never be like anybody else in the entire world. I think that's so rare. I do think that there is a design element. I don't know what, I just think, and the fact that when you look into like psychedelics and all of the ancients, they were like, if you want to know the universe, if you want to know God, it's all about psychedelics. And I find it really interesting that majority of people who try you know, psychedelic drugs, ayahuasca, they all have very similar, what could be aligned with like spiritual religious experiences where they feel like part of the world and the universe, and they feel something higher than them.
Yeah. Yeah, like
So
I
think there's something.
I myself, like I've never done any psychedelics, but not saying I'm opposed to it. But
It'd be interesting if you did. It'd be interesting to see what your
right. I would be very interested, you know. I can tell you right now, it wouldn't be anything to convince me of any like afterlife or God, because for me, it's you're taking a drug, you know, it's altering your mind. It's a mind altering drug. So that's quite literally what it's supposed to do.
Or you're accessing something like,
or am I accessing something? True.
Yeah, there's it's interesting with Egypt, every single temple, just again and again and again, it's the same imagery that they wanted to carve. They thought it was so important that they wanted to carve down this message again and again and again. And they said that the three like keys that you need was sound, like vibrational sound frequencies, is tuning forks and sound imagery everywhere. So it's like sound and vibrations, advanced mathematics, and like Blue Lotus, which is like their like LSD drug, like,
yeah,
like their ayahuasca. And so they were like, if you want to, that's the three keys to their civilization, to humanity, to the world and everything. It's advanced maths, sound and frequency, and Blue Lotus. And I think that's how they were like getting enlightened. And it's just interesting. It's interesting.
It definitely is interesting. Yeah,
I mean, I don't have advanced maths. I'm really rubbish at maths.
Right.
Sorry, my.
Let's say hi.
But yeah, really interesting. That was the image that they just repeated again and again, all different sites all over Egypt, all the temple walls. It was all to do with that. And I was like, I think there's something in it. There's something to do with. I think the ancients had possibly different levels of awareness than we do now. I think that's a possibility. They were possibly more open to things, more aware and at one with the universe and things.
Exactly. And that's kind of where the argument of lost technology. Maybe they had a different way of thinking and inventing things and doing mathematics. I don't know. Maybe they had some different method of, you know, construction, obviously, and it's just lost in time. You know, maybe ayahuasca is how they developed, you know, these tools that are lost. You know, who knows?
I think a lot of things, like we have tiny little like vague ripples of it now, like astral projection or lucid dreaming, or that weird thing where you're thinking of somebody, or you just have a feeling, you're like, oh my goodness, I need to check on this person, and then you call them or they call you and you're like, that's so weird, I was just thinking about you. And we pass it off every single time as, oh my god, that's so weird. But what if that's actually just a little remnant, a little like ripple of what the way we used to be able to communicate? I mean, we don't think it's that weird. I'm talking to you, you're on another side of the world. Just because we're doing it through a machine, it makes it, we're like, oh, but what if we had the capacity to connect with each other?
Yeah, that'd
without the machines.
Right.
What if I have a feeling that we're just replicating old old tech with machines now.
That's
Things
very
like
true.
information sharing, Wi-Fi connecting, telephones. We're just replicating electronically what could be done. They've proved that electricity can be, you can have wireless electricity.
Yeah.
Tesla found
Right.
that, and I
Tesla.
think that it's very possible that he rediscovered that rather than invented it completely.
Yeah.
If the Earth has the capacity to charge electricity and you can wirelessly throw it around.
Exactly. And it's like, I mean, you look at like places, you know, like Pumapunku that has like the magnetic H blocks that aren't supposed to be magnetic, but they are. And like what is it? It's the Baghdad battery. You know, you can make literally
Yes.
an electric battery out of literally nothing. And it's, so there's some sort of hidden meaning, and there definitely needs to be more testing done with like astral projection and lucid dreaming. I do feel like there needs to be far more vigorous testing on it. I feel like it does kind of get passed off as woo right off the bat. I do
We
agree to that.
understand it now.
But I feel like we
yeah.
need to focus more on trying to find a way to test these things. But until then, for myself, I can't, you know, I don't believe it's simply because of lack of evidence. But if we test these things and the evidence comes forward, I 100% will get behind it. I just myself personally haven't seen sufficient evidence for well, lucid dreaming is one thing because I've personally done that. So like, so I know I can lucid dream, you know, I used to be able to, but
that's an echo. Lucid dreaming, I think, is like an echo of different, you know, archaic functions of our brain that we could use to access and things like,
right.
I think in the same way of like that. But yeah, there was a police force, I think. Who was it? I remember reading about it, and they did this. They wanted to see if they could help find missing people in like murder cases. They brought in people to try and see and visualize, and they did a whole data report on, what's it called? Is it called EPM? No, it's like it's actually got like a sciencey name. It's when you try and see things that you can't see, and the results of it actually went on for years, and the results of it was quite amazing. They didn't obviously get everything every time, but they said that some people do have they were getting weirdly close on some stuff, finding where bodies were and finding where people had been, and people would see like maybe specific places or monuments, and it's interesting. Imagine if we could tap in, if we had this archaic ability to like project and be able to see.
I totally agree, because I mean, when things like Dr. Robert Schoch's been saying for years, you know, solar flares happen more often than meteors. So, you know, it's more so we're kind of overdue for a solar flare. And if something like that happens, we're not going to have technology to communicate. So we need to start learning to talk to each other through our minds, I guess.
Exactly.
Because it's going to be a problem if something like that happens, or like, you know, another Younger Dryas or the Yellowstone National Park ends up blowing up and vaporizing all of us. You know, probably should work on it.
Yeah. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. Like it has to be a muscle or a tool or a brain thing that like, even in like the last 20 years, anyone who's 33, this was a while ago, they said anyone who's 33 or younger literally has a different hand bone, like muscle wise, than anybody who hasn't been brought up with cell phones and texting.
Interesting.
Because they said that, so the rate that you can move this thumb, your left or whichever one you use,
right?
And I tested it on like my parents and any older people that I know. They literally cannot bend their thumb at the speed that we do. We have like a different dexterity to our thumbs,
I don't know
purely because of cell phones, and that had only come about, that like evolutionary tweak had come about in like less than 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Can you imagine the tools and the skills that we would have if you needed them? Like, back in the day, how would you contact people? You would be connected to people. I think our bodies can sync up in ways, like, I'm really baffled about how girls' periods can sync up. just
Yeah.
by girls that you become close with. You then
Right.
sync up your bodily cycles. How does that even
It's
happen? Like,
some
what? That's
weird stuff.
insane. You meet someone, move in with a girlfriend, and your bodies sync up. Like, so I think that, yeah, it's not the farthest stretch of the imagination that we could like connect and sync and stay connected to people, that you can, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not the weirdest thing in the world. I think twins, twins
Oh
have that
yeah.
weird
Twins are
connection
weird.
that
I
yeah,
love
and it's
yeah.
accepted and it's like studied way more than non-twin people. But like twins have like a kind of telepathic communication. And I
Yeah.
think that they, again, maybe just have like the strongest remnants of the ancient
Yeah,
communication skills.
definitely. So that means if you're twins and you're listening, then that means you need to come on the show and talk to me because I want to know about your
Yes.
psychic twin abilities. Like
Yeah, it's like
honestly,
a thing. It's
I'm honestly curious.
yeah, it's a total thing. And but for some reason maybe it's just studied more in twins and rather than like random people. But
Yeah,
yeah, the
yeah,
psychology of it, I don't know.
very interesting stuff. All right,
There's,
well,
there's something. There's
well,
something out there.
Johanna, I had an awesome time talking to you. We went over a buttload of stuff, and I'm sure the audience is on information overload. So we probably should cut it now so that we
Sure.
don't
Yeah, that's
kill the
otherwise we'll
audience.
roll on
And
for
because I'm
hours and
sure,
hours.
yeah, they have plenty that they can look into. Until maybe next time you can
Yes.
be on and we can talk about some more stuff. But before we go, why don't you go ahead and plug yourself? Where can people find you? Or your comedy, what you do, everything. Go ahead and plug yourself.
Yes, so I Jahannah James on YouTube, Jahannah James on Instagram. I think I'm going to set up a new Instagram account purely for the ancient history mystery stuff because for the last 5 years I've been like a comic on Instagram and been making skit comedy
Yeah.
with loads of silly characters, and that's kind of been my day job for 5 years before I did this stuff. And I think a lot of people get a bit confused because they find me in one side of the internet and they follow me to the other, and then they're like, what's she doing dressing up as this old lady?
I mean, it's funny stuff. I mean, who cares?
Yeah, I think it's confusing people. So I think, but for the minute, I'm just Jahannah James everywhere.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, Jahannah James, thank you so much for coming on the show. I will definitely keep in touch with you, and we can maybe try to set up something else in the near future.
And let's practice some of our telepathy. You just send me some messages and we'll touch base in like 2 weeks and we'll see if anything's come true.
I'm sending you mental messages. Are you getting them? All right. Thanks, Johanna.
Thank you. Bye.